Now Jericho was tightly shut up because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days.
Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times, with the priests blowing their trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have all the people give a loud shout. Then the walls of the city will collapse, and the people will go up, every man straight in."
So Joshua, son of Nun, called the priests and said to them, "Take up the ark of the covenant of the Lord and have 7 priests carry trumpets in front of it." And he ordered the people, "Advance, march around the city with the armed guard going ahead of the ark of the Lord."
When Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets before the Lord went forward, blowing their trumpets, and the ark of the Lord's covenant followed them.
The armed guard marched ahead of the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard followed the ark. All this time the trumpets were sounding, but Joshua had commanded the people, "Do not give a war cry, do not raise your voices, do not say a word until the day I tell you to shout. Then shout."
So he had the ark of the Lord carried around the city, circling it once. Then the people returned to camp and spent the night there. Joshua got up early the next morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord.
The 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets went forward, marching before the ark of the Lord and blowing the trumpets. The armed men went ahead of them, and the rear guard followed the ark of the Lord, while the trumpets kept sounding. So on the 2nd day, they marched around the city once and returned to the camp. They did this for 6 days.
On the 7th day, they got up at daybreak and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner, except that on the day that they circled the city 7 times, the 7th time around, when the priest sounded the trumpet blast, Joshua commanded the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city."
When the trumpet sounded, the people shouted. And at the sound of the trumpet, when the people gave a loud shout, the walls collapsed, so every man charged straight in, and they took the city.
Oh no, I need more than that. Stand to your feet, church. Stand to your feet. Make a little noise. That's no fairy tale. That's not fiction. That's mythology. That's the fact of what God did on behalf of his people. So no matter what you're facing right now in your life, what opposition, who's pushing back, when the people of God operate in faith, the walls come tumbling down. Make some noise. There you go. Make noise like the Panthers just won the first game in the Stanley Cup Finals. There you go. Perfect. You may be seated. Thank you, band. Get it up for the band and all the musicians, tech team. Thank you all for being here today. If you're a guest, if you're new, my name is David. I'm one of the pastors here at CBG. I'm always excited, but I'm really excited about this study today. I think it's going to bless somebody. It's going to encourage you. So we're studying a very famous story, Joshua chapter 6. It's one of those famous stories in all the Old Testament. I mean, I can't think of many. David and Goliath, Daniel and the lions, Joshua in the battle of Jericho. So it's a really famous story. In fact, I'm not sure about catechism or Hebrew school, but if you even had a drive-by at Sunday school as a kid, you learned the story. If you're there just at vacation Bible school, once in a while, someone taught you this story. In fact, there was a little song, because my parents did me the favor and blessed me. They took me to church every time I wanted to go to church as a kid. And every time I didn't want to go to church, they still took us, which is brilliant. The kids aren't going to make the right decision, but my mom and dad were the parents. They led us to the house of God. I'm so grateful for that spiritual foundation they instilled in me and my brother and sister. But there was a little song we learned about this story in Joshua chapter 6. I won't sing it. I won't do that to you. But the lyrics were, Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. And some of y'all went to Sunday school. And the walls came a-tumbling down. Yeah, in real life, it wasn't quite that easy. There was some resistance, and it took some time. And so here's the big idea. We're in a theme, if you're new, in a series. It's called Everyone Has a Plan Until You Get Punched in the Mouth. mean, that's not in the Bible, but it could be. It's actually a quote from Iron Mike Tyson, the fighter. And life does that. And we're encouraging people to make a prayerful, humble, God-centric plan. And here's the good news. If you're open to God, not just to be your consultant, but the architect of your plan. He says in Jeremiah 29, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans not to harm you, but to bless you and to prosper you. So God is saying, I got a plan. And the reason that intrigues me is God is smart. Or maybe you're highly intelligent, maybe you have a very high IQ, but compared to God, who knows all information there is to know in the universe, past, present, and future, and then he loves you more than you love you. So think about the goodness of that plan that God has for your life. So what I want to do is not ask God to be the consultant to my plan, but be the architect of the plan. But even if you're choosing to follow God's plan, in whatever realm of life it is, in your finances, in your career, following God's plan in your academics as a student, following God's plan in your relationships, in your marriage, you're going to have opposition. There's going to be challenges. There's some times it doesn't happen the way you want to. In fact, to use the language of this story, there's going to be some times you're going to pray, God, I need these walls to fall. Because there's a barrier between me and your blessing, and even though I'm working the plan. And when it doesn't happen, how and when it takes longer than you think, you might be tempted to say, God, I'm following your plan, but I need a sign. I need some indication that you're in my life. God, I need this breakthrough. Can I have a sign? And I found many times, if God ever gave me a sign during those moments, this would be the sign that God would give me. Don't you hate that sign? Put your hands together if you hate that sign in life. I'm being facetious. I think it's called a loading icon, but I think we call it mainly what? The spinning circle of buffering death. It just means I gotta wait. I gotta wait for something to download on my device or my smart TV. I'm waiting for my entertainment or my information or whatever it is. And I feel like life, pursuing God, there's a whole lot of that. So studying the remarkable story of Joshua. And Joshua is esteemed by Jews, Muslims, and Christians alike. A remarkable man. When I think about his story, these words come to mind: spectacular, sensational, successful. Listen. The word success shows up a remarkable amount of times in the story of Joshua. In Joshua chapter 1, multiple times talks about God blessed him with success. And by the way, that intrigues me. Because if heaven has any success, Edgar, for my life, I want it. I want everything God has in all those areas. So you're going to see God promises success for Joshua. I don't mean weirdness that his kids always made straight A's and he drove an Escalade chariot. I'm telling you, success is promised there. But when you think of his story, it's not just successful and spectacular, it's slow. It takes a lot of time to unfold. In fact, we first meet Joshua, and I know you can read the book that bears his name in like 90 minutes, but we meet Joshua first way back in Exodus chapter 17. That's 4 books to the left. Exodus, that's almost Genesis. So Joshua is not an overnight success. It takes time. Even this battle takes time. Are you willing to trust God for your victory? Though it requires patience and perseverance and persistence and time. It takes time. I've told y'all before, God's timing always fascinates me and always confuses me at the same time. I mean, sometimes I feel like God is moving too fast in my life. He's nudging me to make a decision. I'm like, God, I'm not ready. God, I'm not prepared. God, I'm unworthy. God, I'm still doing research. And God's like, no, now is the time. But more times than not, I feel like God's moving so slowly. Like, God, I need this miracle now. I need the walls to fall now. I need the breakthrough now. God, will you please show up and show off? And I get that. So what do you do if you're waiting for God to work on your behalf? What do you do if you're waiting for your miracle? Are you in? Are you in? Are you in, church? Come on, let's do a study. All right, I'm gonna go old school. Studying the remarkable story, Joshua chapter 6. This one's really, really famous. I want to take a fresh look at this with you. I found 3 reasons why Joshua is so impactful, why his legacy lasts to this day, and why he is so successful. 3 reasons. Get your phone and write these down. The first one I wrote down was this: he took the time to grow. He took the time to grow. I was thinking about even just this story, this very, very famous story in the 6th chapter. I was thinking, why 7 days? Because it seems like all happens on the 7th day, at the very end, after they shout and the walls came tumbling down. Why? In fact, I love to do this. I love to humanize these stories. I love to put myself in the sandals of the people back in the day. So if you and I lived in Israel back in this generation so long ago, and we're not leaders, we're not heads of our tribes or clan, we're just two regular guys. Father's Day's coming up. By the way, my brothers, next week, don't miss next week. In fact, if I can vent for a moment, Mother's Day, mamas, you all do a great job bringing your loved ones to church. Dads, we're terrible. A lot of dads on Father's Day like, man, I just want to sleep in, sit here on the couch, dude. Come on, man up this next weekend. Let's lead the people we love to the house of God. Let's start this Father's Day off right. Come on, man. Come on, you're going to enjoy it. We'll infuse a little extra testosterone next week when you come back for Father's Day week. It's going to be a lot of fun next week. But we're fathers. We lived all these years ago. We're husbands, we're fathers, and there's a call to arms. Now, we're not professional soldiers. We have a trade. But there's a call from General Joshua to come and fight the battle with the city-state Jericho. And Jericho is the first major roadblock between the people of God and the promised land. In fact, I would argue, sidebar, Joshua was so successful. My hot take, I can make the case the people of God experienced more success under Joshua than his highly gifted predecessor, Moses. Now, don't look at me like that. I know Moses is Moses, and Moses was amazing, one of the greatest leaders in all of human history. But the people took possession of the promised land, not under Moses, under Joshua. Not as talented, not as charismatic, just effective. So anyways, Joshua calls us to battle, and we're like, okay, it's going to be a 7-day thing. And we go to the battle, and the battle happens, and the walls come tumbling down. And it's that night, and we come back to Zebulun to our families. I walk in the tent, and my wife greets me, and she hugs me. She's so relieved. I'm covered in dust and dirt because the walls came tumbling down, and we stormed the city, right? And I'm like, honey, it's so good to see you. And the kids come up and hug my legs. And I'm like, oh, sweetheart, I was part of a miracle today. We didn't knock those walls down. We didn't build catapults or battering rams. We marched in circles and the walls fell. God knocked it. Like, wow. And then you're that night at the camp with your neighbors, other men from Zebulun, and you're looking at each other and go, man, that was like our parents and grandparents told us about Pharaoh and the Red Sea and the plagues. And we saw that. They weren't just stories. We're part of a miracle. And that night, laying in your bunk, like drift off to sleep, just euphoric that you're alive and you had this victory, right? You're going to take possession of a promise. You're there going, I wonder why it took 7 days. Because the first 6 days, we just walked in a circle and nothing happened. Right, for 6 days, we walk in the circle around. Here's mighty Jericho, and the gates are still barred, and the walls are still intimidating, and the people in the city are just as defiant. Nothing happened. In fact, nothing happened almost to the end of the 7th day. And maybe there in your tent at night, you're tempted to pray that God, with all respect, may I ask you a question, God, because you can ask God your questions. You can ask God why. God is never offended by a good, honest why question. Ask away. Now, he may not tell you why, but I'd be tempted to say, God, why the first 6 days? Because if Joshua would have asked us to build forge equipment or weapons, I get it. Or to train for the battle, I get it. Or to dig trenches for a siege, I would understand. But for 6 days, like nothing. Then the end of the 7th day, we shout and the walls fall. What? God, I appreciate the extra cardiovascular training and the extra steps on my Fitbit, but why 6 days? It seemed like it took longer than it needed to. That's just life. That's just life. Why was Joshua effective? Well, back in Exodus chapter 24, he's described as Moses' aide. His aide. And the Bible didn't say what that means. What did it mean? Is he helping Moses with really important stuff like drawing up battle plans, write Moses sermons? Or aide, is he just getting Moses coffee? Answering his emails? Packing Moses' bags when the fire moves and the camp has to move by? Oh, is he doing anything, everything, or nothing at all? In fact, when you see Joshua before the book that bears his name, most of the time he's just waiting on Moses. When Moses goes to the mountaintop 40 days, guess who waits at the foot of the mountain? His aide, Joshua. He's just doing whatever small thing that is needed. When Moses goes in the tent to talk to God face to face, guess who waits outside? Joshua. We see this. Here's one of the reasons I think when he had his moment, guys, he's so successful. He joyfully participated in a prolonged apprenticeship. In our world right now that we want everything right now, and we're so impatient. And in this clickbait society, we celebrate people who seem to have success easily and early. Don't be afraid of putting in the time to grow, to glean, to get better. He took the time to be mentored, to mature. Now listen, if you don't know this church, I'm far from my 20s, but we press into young leaders. We train up and release young, dynamic people into leadership like no church I know. In fact, when we began this whole partnership with First Baptist Church downtown, they knew me and they knew Pastor Raul, right? Then I bring in the whole team and they're like, they got pimples, they're so young. Wow, they're riding their longboards to work. Did they even drive? Yeah. We love to use young people. When I was a punk kid in church, they would say, no, you are the future leaders of the church. Mary, the mother of Christ, was probably in her late teens. They married very early back in the day. She bears that heavy responsibility as a teenager. The apostles were probably early teens. Daniel's leading in Babylon at a high level in his early 20s. God leverages young people. But at the same time, when we release young people, we believe in the power of a process. And so, listen, I love our millennials and our Zs in this church. There's a bunch of you guys. Look around. I find the older I get, the younger our church gets. But if you're a young person, I hope you have ambition. I hope you make plans. I hope you work hard. I hope you have big dreams. But if in your 20s or early 30s, you falter or you stumble sometime, don't freak out. This is your time to learn. This is your time to grow. This is your time to learn from people who've been there and done that a little bit. And listen, I was a young leader. The first time I was a senior pastor, I was only 26 years old. Now, don't be too impressed. I was the only person on staff till we raised some money. But I'd already been, I had a master's degree and an undergraduate degree and been in a 2-year internship program. So I had a lot of experience. I started young. I love young leaders. But if you're young and it's not going the way you want to and you're working hard, don't freak out. Now, I'm not giving you permission to be lazy or soft or surely stupid or sinful. But again, if you're just not having that success and the spotlight's not yet found you, or you don't have the platform or the blue check the way you hope, just take a breath. God's given you this season to get better and to grow. Joshua chapter 6, he's young, but he ain't that young. He's been mentored by Moses for years or probably decades before he gets his shot. But when he gets his shot, the boy is ready. You want to push back on this? Okay, question. Who lived the most remarkable life of all time? Jesus, right? That's a layup. Jesus. What does the Bible say about Jesus in his 20s? Nothing. There's not a single verse about Jesus in his 20s. So what's Jesus doing in his 20s? Wasting time? No, of course not. What was he doing? We have to guess. My guess was at age 20, Jesus was a carpenter. And at age 25, Jesus was still a carpenter. And at age 29, hopefully a better carpenter, but a carpenter. But at age 30, when his ministry goes public for the first time, oh my gosh. See, God the Father poured all this into God the Son in his 20s, get him ready for a ministry that would shake the world. It would plunder hell and populate heaven and change everything in the history of the human family. So he's using that time to get you ready, and that is awesome. Don't freak out if you're not there yet. Keep learning, intern, be an apprentice, get mentored by somebody. Neurologists say that the pathways in your brain have not yet solidified until your late 20s, right? That means this, you're wet concrete. That's good, wet concrete. You know what you do with wet concrete? There's impurities or flaws easy to pick out. But in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, that concrete of your brain solidifies. Now the Holy Spirit has to take his chisel and chisel out the character flaws, and that's much more painful. So grow right now. It's okay. And by the way, some of you more mature people like, oh, Pastor David, thank you for telling these millennials and Zs to wait and be patient. You were a mess in your 20s. In your 20s, come on. Some of you older people, you were garbage in your 20s. Now you were thinner garbage, but you were garbage. So just relax. So again, I'm not saying be stupid or be sinful, but if something doesn't go the way you want to, it's okay. Shucks, Oprah, millions love Oprah. Some people don't like Oprah, but you cannot deny she's accomplished a lot. Media mogul, multi-gazillionaire, all kinds of influence. Oprah, media person, got fired from her first media job. She was a local news reporter and got fired at age 23. And you're thinking, who made the mistake to fire Oprah? It's been famously said, no one made the mistake because Oprah was not yet Oprah. She was just a punk 23-year-old that needed to get fired so one day she could become Oprah, amen? So God's gonna use all that stuff. You hang in there, you don't quit. I love Joshua took the time. So the spotlight has not yet found you, that's good. away from the spotlight, you grow, you get better, you humble yourself, you learn. Man, you become the kind of person someday, the best version of you, that when God brings that spotlight your way, you're ready. You've done the requisite character construction that when God gives you platform, you have the character you need to shoulder both the responsibility and the blessing that God has for you. Amen? So right now, you're being grown and groomed for God's greatness in your future. So who's mentoring you? Who's growing you? Well, no one's mentoring me. I mean, you need a mentor. You need a mentor. If Harry needed Dumbledore, and Spider-Man needed Tony Stark, and Adonis needed Rocky Balboa, and every Luke Skywalker needs his Yoda, you need someone to speak into your life to make you better. They love God. They love you. Now, don't call them up and say, will you be my mentor? Because that's kind of weird. Just say, can I take you to coffee, and I'm going to pay, and then I have a list of questions, and meet them, and don't talk about yourself for 45 minutes. Ask that successful person question and borrow their map. Use this time to get better. Joshua is not an overnight success. There are decades before he gets his moment. When his moment comes, he is prepared. He took the time to grow. Number 2, he walked in careful obedience. He walked in careful obedience. So I say 3, shout the word obedience. 1, 2, 3. That's good. Late but good. Thank you guys for playing along. I appreciate that. Look, that's a lot of people, last service, that was the worst response the whole time. Like, obedience. It's not sexy, I get it. But it's the key to success in God things. All right. No matter what age you are, if you're starting some new venture in life, in business, new relationship, and you feel a little over challenged, again, Joshua follows Moses. Think about how intimidating. So in Joshua chapter 1, I won't put it on the screens, but it's so good. It's when God commissions Joshua. God speaks to him and gives him this challenge. I begin in verse 6. I've memorized this because it's so impactful in my life. God says, be strong and courageous. For Joshua, you will give these people possession of the land I promised their forefathers to give them. Like this promised land that's been a dream for half a millennium, boom, you're the point person. It's going to happen. But then it continues, only be strong and very courageous. Be careful to do according to all the law which Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or the left, and then I will make your way successful. This book of the law, it's Torah, the law, all the Bible you have, the first 5 books. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night. That you may be careful to do everything that is in it, and then you will make your way prosperous, and you will have good success. Shout the word success. Success. God says, if you keep my word and obey it carefully, all of it, success. Now, that's a promise God made uniquely for Joshua, but I think we can appropriate some of those principles to our lives. Because it wasn't the absence of problems. I mean, they had rivers to ford, they had walls to take down, they had battles to fight. So when God gives you the promised land, you must fight to take possession of everything God gives you. But he would be successful. So when I think of Joshua, an idea comes to mind. The same way when you think of certain famous characters in the Bible, like one big idea comes to mind. When you think of Solomon, you go brains, really smart, wisdom. Or you think of Moses, leadership, incredible leadership, 10 Commandments. David, God-hearted, took down giants on the side. You think of Elijah, boldness. Isaiah, prophetic insight. When I think of Joshua, I think simple, careful, seamless obedience. I know he wasn't sinless, for all have sinned, but you can't find a single example recorded where he just does something stupid and simple. Conversely, every time that God says obey, he steps into obedience. In fact, speaking of stepping, think about, so faith always turns into verbs. You with me? I mean, faith, I just believe that there's always action steps that God will call you to demonstrate your faith. And so the verbs in this story, this famous story, we got the people of God before the walls fall. That's the objective. They shout and they tote the ark and they toot the trumpets. Mainly they just walk. There's a whole bunch of walking. There's days and days and days of walking. So the objective is that you got to see these imposing walls of the city-state. They're in Canaan. And by the way, those people don't belong there. They're usurpers. They're squatters in the promised land. They got to fall so we can have the victory. So let's run this famous miracle backwards. What happened right before the walls fell? They shouted. They shouted together, by the way, in unity. The people of God shouted together in unity. When I say three, shout the word unity. 1, 2, 3. Unity. Because they agreed on everything. Not a chance, right? There's 12 tribes, 400,000 soldiers, 2 million people. You get 2 Christians, they don't agree on everything. Different tastes, preferences, politics, right? So when they agreed on everything, but they came together on the important thing. Stay with me. That's why they were so powerful. I love our church. When guest speakers come to our church, they go, your church is so diverse. It's multi-generational. Just look around. It's multiracial. We're multi-economic. Is that even a term? I'm making that up. I don't know that's true. I just judge you all based on your cars. You drive up in here because some are nice and some are not, right? All this diversity. We're a unified church. We come together, and I think it's beautiful because Jesus prayed for the unity of his believers in John 17. He prayed for our oneness, not our sameness. Because we'll never be the same. But we come together and we shout in unity. Walls fall. Anyway, it's not the sermon, but just throw it in there, no extra charge. So before the walls, we have a shout. Before the shout, we have priests and trumpets and an ark. Then we have 12 tribes, 400,000 soldiers. Day 7, they march around 7 times on day 7. That's before the shout. And then day 1 through 6, they 1 time each day. Well, David, how long did it take them to march around the city? Fair question. You might think, did it take 10 hours or what? No, actually, we have found ancient Jericho. Modern day Jericho still exists, by the way. It is still, isn't that cool? It is still a thing. In fact, I want to do an Israel trip, not this year because it's over there, but maybe next year, into next year, and you can go visit modern day, we went together, didn't we? Modern day Jericho. It's been inhabited better part of 4,000 years. It's a big city. Ancient Jericho, 9.5 to 10 acres. Thank you, but that's not helping, is it? 4/10 of a mile in diameter. Okay. If you go to World Showcase at Epcot, that's where all the countries are around the big lake, and you go around that, right? If you walk around that at a brisk pace, that's almost the size of what Jericho was. That's a little smaller as you walk around. Now, if you drink your way around, it's going to take you a lot longer, so don't do that. But if you just walk around it, then you're good. That's about the size. So we're breaking down. We're shouting. We got priests. We have trumpets. We have arks. We have 400,000 men from 12 tribes. We have 7 laps on day 7. We have 1 lap on day 1 through 6. Now, that was for the theme park fans. Now, for the NASCAR fans, let's make it left-hand laps. Let's go counterclockwise, all right? So 4 left-hand turns. Now, let's break it down more. They're marching in a circle. What is marching? Here's the most fundamental component of the victory. Because the victory is not just a shout in day 7. It's every step. And marching is taking the next small step that God has placed in front of you. Faith isn't that hard. I know your battle's big. These walls are massive. This barrier is imposing. How in the world? I don't have enough means and resources and support system or experience. True. Can you take the next step? Can you take the next step? What's that small little bite-sized step that God's given you to take? I'll get all up in your stuff. You're in your final year of college coming up, and you've been putting off that chemistry class the whole time. You're putting that off because, oh my gosh, it's going to eat my lunch. Okay, you're going to get your tutor, get a head start on that, get the text early. You're going to start right now. You're going to crush it next semester. That's your next step. You're a sophomore in high school, and Algebra 2 waits for you. And you're like, Pastor, will I ever use Algebra 2 at any point in my life? The answer is no, you will not. But it's the next step in front of you. Let's tackle this thing. You complain about your health. Okay, let's start that diet today. On the weekend? Yeah, today. Take the step in front of you today. Exercise program. I'll let you wait on Monday to that. Never read my Bible, go to YouVersion, free app, or go to the church app and download a reading plan. Let's start that thing today. A life group. Let's make this big church intimate and relational. You can join one this week. What is it for you? You're a financial disaster. Here's your step. Financial Peace University in the fall. Are you tracking with me? You battle with addiction. God bless you. You crave sobriety. You're praying for God. Help me, God. Stay clean. A 12-step program here at church called Celebrate Recovery. So your first step before you get into 12 steps is to show up and take a step in the door on Thursday as they love on you and receive you. That's the way you find victory. If you're not sure what your step is, we got a thing here called Best Next Step, right? Right outside, I brought him back with the posters one more time. So when I'm done talking in 6 minutes and 14 seconds, you walk right out there. It takes like 25 minutes. And you're like, I don't know my next step in my faith because I'm confused. Guess what? We're all different. Somebody here, you're a very mature Christ follower. You know your Bible in Hebrew. Someone else, you don't have a Bible. We customize it. It's not weird, but people will talk with you and help you figure out your best next step in following the King. Now, by the way, let me say this too. There's some Christian here, and this whole idea is kind of lost on you, a person of faith. He's like, David, I don't know that big plan. I can't find God's vision for my life. I know it says in Jeremiah 29:11, he has a plan. I can't figure that out. It's a mystery. Let's do a diagnostic. Okay, you're confused. God's life plan for you. Is there some small step he's already shown you you've not taken? There's some easy thing you can do, like give yourself by faith to Christ. Prayer partners will be here in 5 minutes, just like all the time, to help you navigate life's greatest decision. Oh, I still have questions. I have issues. You believe God made you and he loves you. And you believe Jesus was his son. You believe Jesus died on the cross to pay for our sin. You believe he rose again. You're there. But I have other questions. I know about the Bible. And did Adam have a belly button? Who cares? It doesn't matter. You have enough information, enough illumination to take a breath, step in the light. Baptism. We'll baptize you today. We got clothes and everything. We'll baptize you today. Oh, I'm not ready. My hair. Who cares? Today. See, you're asking for the illumination. God's going to give you the light for steps 5, 6, and 7. When you won't take it the step, they just put before you right now. Take the step. Take the step. Take the step. Let me close with this. Quickly follow the plan. Number 3, he follows God's plan. It's not just obedient, he follows God's weird plan. This is a weird plan. Now, most times, if you're new to the Bible, God's plan for your life makes perfect sense. It's so logical, it's so smart, it's striking. You're gonna say, oh my gosh, that's practical, that will work. Like, I don't know, there's a teenager here and things are tense between you and mom and dad, and you're pushing back and they're frustrated with you. Okay, here's what the Bible says, teen. Now listen, hear me out, don't get mad. The Bible says, hey, teen, honor and obey your parents. Not just obey, that's huge, but respect them and honor them. I don't want to do that. Would it work? If you made that your habit and you started to do that habitually, wouldn't that just lower their defenses? It's going to throw them at first. Just do it to freak them out for a while. Be polite and respectful and obey. What they're going to do eventually is give you not less freedom, but more freedom. My kids have always been good kids, and I said the way to maximize your freedom in our family is just keep the rules, be respectful, and we'll give you as much freedom as we possibly can. It'll work. The Bible says marriage, submit to one another in love. Oh my gosh, Lisa, if our marriage is a competition for the other person's joy, how well is that going to work? Other times it's kind of crazy. Like tithing. I put tithing, I won't read the whole thing, but tithing, Malachi 3:10 on the screen. God promises to open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing, you don't have room enough for it. But you run that by your accountant who's not a Christian. Right? Hey, I really believe that 90% of my income with God's blessing will go further than 100% without God's blessing. He or she's going to think you're nuts. So stay with me. So here's Joshua, the new guy. This is his first major campaign. It's huge. Biggest battle since Pharaoh and the Red Sea. People got 40 years before. And so it's late at night. There's a big massive tent, a meeting set up. There's armed soldiers out in front. Inside the big tent, there's a large table on the tent. There's a massive map detailed of Jericho, information provided by the spies that Rahab hid. And here's all Joshua's soldiers, his colonels and generals in there. And Joshua rolls in. The room is thick with smoke. There's a warm, eerie light. And they're saying, okay, what's going to come up? There's anticipation. What is General Joshua's command going to be? Will it be a siege? Will he attack the front gates? And Joshua, the new guy, walks in and says, here's what we're doing, gentlemen. They're all older and more experienced than him. We're walking around in circles for 7 days. And God told me that's how we went. The first miracle in the book of Joshua, chapter 6, is not the walls. It's the generals did what Joshua said. They followed him. Because that plan is absurd. Are you kidding me? In the flesh, you'd have been like, what have you been smoking? Where's Moses? This is terrible. That won't work. But there had to be something in his eye, something in his count, something in his spiritual swagger. He walked in, and when General Joshua said, this is what God said, here's how we win, he didn't flinch. And there's a certain confidence you have when you've been in the presence of the living God, and God's the one who gave him. God was the architect of this absurd plan. So Joshua walked in with this incredible Godfidence, not confidence, because God gave him this plan. I'm just telling you, if you have the courage to obey even the illogical plan of God, if you walk in confidence, taking that small step that God has shown you right now, there's going to be a holy confidence in your life. And when you walk in obedience to the word of the living God, you cannot lose. You cannot fail. God will step up every single time. And I'll tell you this, the walls will come tumbling down. The mountains will move in your life. But it won't just happen because you want to see it happen. You have to take that step in obedience. Every step before the shout was just as critical for the walls to fall. So y'all nice. Thank you for standing and clapping. But it ain't what I want. I want you to come to a prayer partner or forgive someone or start to serve or make God the centerpiece of your house and walk in his victory. Father God, thank you. You're the same yesterday, today, and forever. And someone's gonna bust a move. It's great they clap. That's so cute. I want to see decisions of people following God's plan in their life. To forgive, to go to a life group, to get unselfish and serve, to come say, I'm not certain I'm going to heaven. I want to leave this place knowing I'm saved and right with Christ. Baptism. God, help us make courageous, obedient decisions you can bless. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho in obedience, and the walls came a tumbling. Y'all have a good week. God bless you.